Greetings, guys. It's your girl, Kanye. Yes, I'm stopping by. And I'm not stopping by for any other reason as to have a chat with you guys about a topic that I hear so much about all around the fitness wellness industry. And that them two words is intermediate fasting. What is intermediate fasting? Well, the name sort of tells a lot about it. It's about fasting. But it's intermediate fasting. And what that means is basically you dedicating a time frame in which you do not consume any food, but you must consume water. The durations can vary. It also depends on where your level of ability to hold on to your fast. I always tell people, if you're new to fasting, don't jump into it too fast, too soon. You might want to start with just maybe 8 to 10 hours of fasting, and then in a 6-hour window in which you actually consume food. Typically, intermediate fasting is considered between 12 to 18 hours, range in between there, 12 to 18 hours. So the more you get more comfortable with intermediate fasting, you can add hours to that. So one thing I want you to understand too, before you decide if you want to do intermediate fasting, make sure your lifestyle can work with this type of process. Because it makes a difference. You have to have a lifestyle in which you're able to fast, and also when it's time for you to eat, you're able to get to that food immediately so it don't break what you're doing. So that's very important. People have different types of work environments that maybe not be conducive to this. Only you know. I'm going to give you as much information during this little short time period as I possibly can. And if you have any more questions or concerns, please reach out to me. So I already explained to you what intermediate fasting is. So we already sort of do fasting. And I'll give you an example. If you eat at 8 p.m. and you don't eat again until breakfast time, that's really intermediate fasting. But you don't think about it that way, but it is. The word breakfast actually came from the fact it's called breaking fast, because we don't eat from, typically we used to did not eat until from bedtime to morning. So that's where we get the word breakfast from. I'm going to give you an example for intermediate eating. Take, for instance, you start from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's 12 hours in which you consume no food. The only thing you consume is water. Make sure during this time period that you also consume electrolytes. That's very important. Water and the electrolytes will help with your hunger cravings and also with headaches that may occur from not eating. Electrolytes can be found in Gatorade. You don't want to drink a lot of Gatorade, but you want to drink probably one of the small containers of Gatorade during this time period to help you with your electrolytes. Another way you can get electrolytes is through sea salt. Put it in your water. That will help during that process. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. you're fasting, and right after 7 p.m. you consume your first meal. Please make sure you don't do a small meal. You want to do a good meal in which when you finish eating, you feel you're satisfied. Not gorge yourself or overeat, but you want to feel satisfied. Don't do a small meal, because that can be detrimental. It's important that you still understand that you have to make sure you get in enough calories. Not getting enough calories can be as detrimental as overeating. So you got to find that daily calorie intake that you need to do to help assist in you losing weight. And that you either talk to your doctor about, your nutritionist, and either your personal trainer, such as myself. Yes. So that's what intermediate fasting is. Making sure that you do not eat for a time frame consecutively. You can't do it one day and then you don't do it until 2 weeks later. However, you can do every other day. That is beneficial also. But like myself, I like doing more Monday through Friday intermediate fasting, because it's more structured during my Mondays and Fridays. And on the weekends, it's not as structured. So I just try to eat good foods, or just try to eat regular during Saturdays and Sundays, to give you an idea how to do this. The benefits of intermediate fasting, of course, what we all have heard is weight loss. And that's very true. Weight loss have been shown to help. Intermediate fasting have shown to people to help them lose weight and also trim down. It is effective. I believe in it greatly. The more research is coming out about it, the more we see that it is beneficial. And the reason why we even started this is that we had some scientists and nutritionists who was doing research. And the research wasn't about intermediate fasting. They was trying to figure out why the world is gaining weight so much. Decade after decade, generation after generation, we get bigger and bigger. And one thing that they noticed or contributed to is that we are consuming foods longer time periods throughout our day. Generations before us was much more structured with their consuming foods. They woke up early, same time each day, and I'm just giving an example because it was more of a farming society, because they had to get up early. They had to get up early. They had to get out in the fields at a certain time before the nightfall came to get work done. So they was more structured. So they didn't have the ability to be having lights to keep them out of the dark, all these things. So they ate less because they had less time to be sitting around to consume foods. Now we are at desks. We have food all around us. It's such a convenience. Back then, it wasn't a convenience. They had to literally go to the kitchen and actually make a meal. So keep your mind wrapped around that. The reason why we're becoming bigger is that we have access to food so much handily than our previous or predecessors did. So when they was doing the research, that's the first thing they noticed is that Americans now are consuming food between 15 to 16 hours per day out of a 24-hour day period. That's a lot of time of consuming. And you don't realize it because you eat a little here, you eat a little there, and you're constantly eating throughout your day. Where predecessors, they pretty much ate breakfast, 6 a.m., and I'm gonna exaggerate, maybe even 5 a.m. to get up early to work the farm. And then they out in the farm, they may come in to have a lunch around noon, and then they back in the farm. And keep in mind, they're working, so they're not at a desk. Then they come in for dinner around 6 o'clock, and then that was it. And then they go to bed, let's say around 9. And keep in mind, from 6 to 9, they have that time period in which their food is digesting. So they go into bed on a pretty much not empty stomach, but a stomach that's not heavy. And then they go to bed and do it all again. And they were structured because they had no choice. So the weight was not as bad as it is now because we have the luxury of being on computers. We have lights whenever we want them. We have the structure of working 24 hours a day when they did not. So I digress, but you get the point, right? So them are the things we have to think about. Why it's such a struggle for us in our day and time is that we are having these luxuries, and sometimes luxuries cannot necessarily always be completely beneficial. Keep that in mind. So the benefits of intermediate, of course, weight loss, as I said previously, it helps with your insulin levels. It also helps with inflammation. Inflammation is definitely something that we see when we especially have an active workout, and especially if we really push ourselves during our workout, that inflammation comes around and that brings soreness. So with intermediate fasting, have seen that it helps with inflammation and soreness. That's another benefit. It also helps with the blood glucose levels. It keeps it not so high. So we definitely don't want that. So I done told you a few things what it's all about, and I'm gonna tell you a few things that you should not do if you're intermediate fasting. The first thing you should not do is allow yourself to get dehydrated. Oh, that's not gonna be good. Make sure you're not dehydrated during this process. Always consuming water during that fasting period and even afterwards. Be very mindful of that. Number 2, don't jump in too soon, too fast. You want to gradually bring intermediate fasting into your lifestyle, especially if you have not done this before on the regular basis. You might want to start off with just focusing on maybe 10 hours per day. And as you get more acclimated to it, increase your hours. So don't jump in too fast, too soon. Especially if you starting off with, if you're already consuming a bad diet. First, I suggest you clean up your diet. Because if you have a bad diet and you're doing this, it's not going to be beneficial. You have to do a fast, and then once your fast is over, you have to eat a healthy, balanced meal that has carbs, proteins, and fats. You don't want to consume too much carbs during this process of intermediate fasting. But carbs can cause you to hold on to your weight more so than protein and fat. So you want it all to be balanced, okay? Let's see what else we got. I wrote it down to make sure. Making sure you eat when it's time for you to eat. If you get to the point where it's time for you to eat, but you're stuck in traffic, you can't get to food, that blows your whole fasting off. So you got to make sure it works with your lifestyle. As soon as your fasting period is over, you should be consuming your first meal. So that consistency is so important. I talked about the carbs not being too high. I also want to emphasize the importance. You got to make sure you're consuming enough calories. Small meals right after fasting would not work. You want to eat something good and solid. Don't overeat, but you definitely want to do not come across or end up eating and still feel that you're hungry. You want to consume enough calories during this time. Must fit your lifestyle. I can't emphasize it enough. And during your fasting period, you don't want to consume any alcohol. I suggest no alcohol at all, even after you fast, but also definitely not during the fasting. Nothing but water consumed during that time. If you want to consume alcohol, I always suggest choose better, beneficial, sounds weird to say, more healthier choices of alcohol as far as the calories. Make sure you choose them type of alcohol beverages over just your typical heavy calorie beverages if you have to drink. Lastly, I'm going to emphasize again, and I'm guilty of this, raising my hand, making sure you get enough rest. I'm so much better. I have to really, really make myself get in enough rest, because we all can get victims of just going to sleep late. And unfortunately, that's so detrimental to this process. And even if you're not doing fasting, it's detrimental to your overall health and wellness. Sleeping is so important, because during your sleep is a process that's taking place inside your body. And that process can only take place during sleep. That process is basically rejuvenating your cells, replenishing every muscle that you have tore down from working out, because you get hairline fractures when you work out, especially with resistance. And them hairline fractures can only be built back up during your resting state or sleeping state. So that's why it's so important that you hear trainers and the health industry is saying sleep is so vitally important, because we don't recognize it. We just think we're sleeping. But when you're sleeping, your body goes into actual overdrive as far as what it's doing inside. Check out a YouTube video. They have a lot just showing what your body does internally while you sleep. Very fascinating. Very fascinating. All right, guys. So I am leaving you with all this information. It's still so much more information out there about intermediate fasting. The key of it is that you have to decide if this will work with your lifestyle. If that step is yes, contact me if you have any more questions, any more concerns about it, or feel free to do your own research. There's so much research out there on intermediate fasting. The key to anything or any program that you decide to do, you have to be consistent in order to see the results. You have to be consistent in order to see the results. I'm repeating that because that's the true essence if you will be successful. I'll leave you guys with that. Intermediate fasting. Try it. You maybe love it. I love it myself. It's awesome. I love it. And again, I will say this. If you try it and it doesn't feel good to you, stop it. If you try it and it feels like you're feeling better, not just your weight, but you just feel better physically, mentally, your mind, all this stuff, then stick with it. That's your indicator. Intermediate fasting is right for you. Until next time, guys, God bless, and the journey continues.